Well, as you can see, we'll be starting our study on the book of Revelation tonight. And I'm really looking forward to this study. Studied Revelation for a lot of years, off and on. And it's just a wonderful book. Many, many wonderful lessons we can learn from this book. And so many people are afraid of it, though. I don't know if you felt that way in your own life. At one time I was too. I remember as a child, when I was old enough to read, but I wasn't really tuned into the sermon on Sunday morning. I would sit and read Revelation because I thought, well, the dragons and the monsters and all of that, but I had no idea what it was about. And many people are afraid of this book. And I've heard people say things like, I will not teach the book of Revelation. I've heard a very knowledgeable preacher in the church say that to me one time, multiple times. I will not preach or teach on Revelation. When I was a young man in my 20s, I was doing a little bit of teaching for a church in Alabama, and one of the elders told me, stay out of the book of Revelation. And well, I wasn't ready to teach on it anyway, but there was a hesitancy there that, it's just something we can't figure out. We just can't handle it. And I can understand that. It's a different kind of a book, isn't it? It's different in a lot of ways. But people will say, well, it's just, it frightens me. I don't know what to do with it. And it is a different sort of a book as you compare it to other New Testament books. But what a shame to miss out on this very powerful, very relevant for our lives today book. And so we're going to go through the book chapter by chapter, but we're going to start this evening kind of taking a broad overview of the book. And we're going to ask ourselves, what is this book about? Now, usually I like to just go through the verses and we'll build up what it means, inductively as we go through verse by verse. But in this case, I think it would be better to take a look at what the book says about itself and sort of get the big picture, a big framework of what is this book about? And then we can go in over the coming weeks and take it chapter by chapter. I'm indebted to a few different sources over the years. I began to understand more about the book of Revelation at the congregation that I grew up in Jefferson City, Missouri, Fairgrounds Road congregation. And Brent Newton, the preacher there, he would teach every few years through the book of Revelation. And over time, I started to finally see it. Hey, this is understandable. We can draw a lot from this book. And then over time, I got familiar with the work of Brother Jim McGuigan, who wrote a commentary on Revelation, which I've used heavily. And then a couple of years ago, somebody put me on to Stafford North's commentary, the 7 keys of Revelation, or something like that. Another brother in the church, and a very, very helpful commentary. And we're going to look at some of his suggestions tonight about how to understand this book. But I wanted to put that forth at the outset that I am indebted to many good teachers on this topic. And I want to encourage you. The book of Revelation can be understood and should be understood. It's not an easy book necessarily, but it's also not as hard as some people make it out to be. And God intended for it to be understandable. I want you to look with me at chapter 1 and verse 3. Which reads, "Blessed is he who reads, and those who hear the words of this prophecy, and heed the things which are written in it, for the time is near. Who is blessed? Those who read the words, right? Those who hear the words of this prophecy, and who else? And heed the words of this prophecy. Now, what do you need in order to be able to heed something? You've got to be able to understand it. And there's a blessing, right? There's a blessing attached to it if we would read and listen and understand and heed these words. There's a blessing for us. And so Jesus wouldn't say to us, you'll be blessed if you heed this, but it's impossible to understand. Right? That doesn't make sense, does it? So it can be understood. And I want us in this study to read and hear and understand so that we will be blessed by God. And this book is very, very relevant to all ages of time, even to you and I today. We'll see a lot of relevance for our own lives. Well, let's talk about the overall meaning of this book. Let's start with the overarching view of things. Things that we can know for sure from this book. I'm going to give you maybe a way to summarize the entire book in one sentence. There's probably other ways we could summarize it, but listen to this. See if you agree. Well, don't tell me yet. See it at the end of the class, at the end of the course, if you agree. Revelation is about the struggle of the church against the Roman Empire. I'll say that again. Revelation is about the struggle of the church against the Roman Empire. Now, within that, of course, you see the struggle of good versus evil. You see the struggle of Satan, who is empowering the Roman Empire, and you see Jesus Christ, who gives victory to his church. Victory is guaranteed. And that's one of the overarching messages of this book. You're going to face persecution, and he's writing to people who would face persecution from the Roman Empire. But if you hold to Jesus, you will be victorious. So hold to Jesus. Well, how do we know that this book is about the church's struggle against the Roman Empire? How do we know that to be true? Don't take my word for it. I don't have any kind of special insight. I'm just reading what it says. The book itself will tell us what it's about. And that's one of the keys, really, of the book. I'm adding my own key. We're going to see 7 keys in a moment, but I'm going to add one more here. You have to keep reading. Keep reading. The temptation in a book like Revelation is to read a chapter or two and then to start speculating. This must mean that. This must be Cobra helicopters. This must be nuclear war. This must be the European Union. And people start going off the deep end speculating. But if we would just keep reading, many times the book itself will tell you what the symbols mean. We just have to keep reading. And so what we'll find, I believe, is that a great majority of the prophecies in this book have been fulfilled. But does that mean that the book is not relevant to us? Just because most of the prophecies have been fulfilled. Does that mean it's not relevant? Well, think about this. Think about the book of Joshua, for example. Think about the book of Exodus. Much of those books are a fulfillment of what God promised to Abraham, aren't they? Fulfilled long ago. But are those books still relevant to us? Of course they are. So much to learn from those books. And we'll find the same to be true in Revelation.
You said things that have come true that have been predicted in here.
Yes, many of the things, I believe, the majority.
The first verse says, which must shortly take place.
Good. Yeah, we're headed there. Yeah, that's a big clue to what this book is about. Yes. All right, so one thing we're going to need to do is keep reading. Let the book explain itself. And we'll see that over and over again in our study. Yes, and you are right on to our first key to understanding the book. So you have an encouragement of why we're studying it, the overall meaning, and let's look at the 7 keys. These come from Dr. Stafford North. He was a professor at Oklahoma Christian University. He's our brother in Christ. I believe he's passed away now. Is that right? Yeah. But a very, very good teacher. And here are his 7 keys. Number 1, as Dave just mentioned, the book of Revelation is written in symbols. It's written in symbols. You might say it's written in apocalyptic language. Figurative, highly figurative language. In your experience in reading Revelation, does it read similarly to other books in the Bible? Yeah, it's not as clear. I know some other books in the Bible that I struggle with. What does this mean? Well, what books is it like? Ben? Yeah, a lot of similarities with Daniel.
There are a lot of other
Similarities.
Yeah,
interpreting their dreams, but there are a lot of similarities to other parts of the Bible.
yes, a lot of similarities. Wes?
Is that similar to what?
The book of Daniel and other parts of the Bible, like Joseph's dreams, and the like. The book of Ezekiel comes to mind. Have you ever read Ezekiel? Zechariah comes to mind. Portions of Isaiah come to mind. So this is, the point is that when we know our Old Testament well, when we then go to Revelation, we think, I've seen this kind of thing before. And knowing the Old Testament and what some of that means will help us to understand what we're seeing in Revelation. And there are parts of the Bible that are clearly figurative, right? Jesus said, I am the bread of life. Is that a figure of speech? He's not actually bread, is he? Right? We don't need to be hyper literal. But what does he mean by that? Well, he's the one that sustains us and nourishes us, and we live off of Jesus. The Bible talks about we are as Christians, we are salt and light. Well, are we literally salt and light? Of course not. So I'm just saying there are other figurative passages in the Bible. There are a lot of them. And so normally, when you're studying the Bible, and the New Testament especially, you want to take everything literally unless you're forced to not take it literally, just by common sense or other reasons. But in the book of Revelation, we kind of turn that on its head. We're going to take most everything figuratively, unless it's clearly not figurative. And that's a huge debate, right? How do you know what's clearly figurative and what's not? Well, some of it is a little bit of common sense. So when he writes to the church at Ephesus, was Ephesus an actual city in Turkey, modern day Turkey? Yeah. It's not a symbol. He's actually writing to the church at Ephesus. And so, but the general rule is we're going to take it figuratively, by and large. It's picture language. And Brother North, in the lectures I watched of him, he would do this. You remember this, Russ? And he told everyone, do your hands like this. And this is, what does it say? What are the symbols? But under that, what does it mean? And I think that's a pretty good way to look at the book of Revelation. What does it say? But underneath that, what does it mean? What does it mean? So it's symbolic language. And I want you to know that in our study of the book of Revelation, we're going to figure out what a lot of this means because the book will tell us what it means. And I don't want you to think, well, we're going to just be real hand wavy and we're just going to kind of say, this is about good versus evil and we can't figure anything else out. We're going to be able to figure some things out. And my goal is that you and I will leave this study and say, I do know something about the book of Revelation, and I can see how it applies to my life. With that said, we're not going to be able, at least I'm not going to be able to give you the meaning of every little detail in the book. So being that it's symbolic language, think of it as painting a picture. John is told to describe what he sees. And he's seeing these visions, and they're just out of this world. They're amazing visions, and he's writing down what he sees. And so what he's doing is painting a picture for us so that we will get the main point of what is being said. But I don't know that every detail has a meaning that we can ascribe to it. I was talking with Russ last week, and he said something very, very helpful. It's like if you're watching a movie, what good would it do to hyper-focus on everything in the background in the movie? Oh, I see a picture hanging on the wall in the background. Does that have some kind of meaning to it? Or there's something sitting on the table back here? Well, to do that, you're missing the point of the picture that's being painted, right? And so we're going to strive to get the message of the picture that's being painted for us. Let me pause here. Questions, thoughts? What's the second key? It's about events that will shortly come to pass. This is huge. Events that will shortly come to pass. There are many today, and you hear it a lot if you listen to religious teachings that are out there. They're trying to apply everything or almost everything in Revelation to today's time or to a time that's future for us. But what does the book say about itself? In the very first verse, look at chapter 1, verse 1. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show to his bondservants the things which must soon take place. And he sent and communicated it by his angel to his bondservant John. What do you learn right off the bat? It's things that will soon take place. From our perspective? No, from the time that he's writing. It's things that will soon take place. Look down at verse 3 again. What do you learn there in verse 3? The time is near. The time is near. Look over at chapter 22. Look at the end of the book. Look at 22 and verse 6. And he said to me, these words are faithful and true. And the Lord, the God of the spirits of the prophets, sent his angel to show his bondservants the things which must soon take place. Soon. Look at verse 10 of chapter 22. And he said to me, do not seal up the words of the prophecy of this book, for the time is near. Soon, near. You remember what Daniel was told? We studied Daniel. Oh, it's been a long time ago now. What was Daniel told at the end of the book? Seal it up. Why? Because it applied to times that were a long time from then. Seal it up. What does he tell John? Look again at verse 10. Do not seal up the words. Why? Because the time is near. The people who he's writing to, the church, they needed to know these things that were going to happen in their lifetime, by and large. So, to me, that is a very important key. And if someone came to you and said, hey, I've got something you really need to know about, something big is about to go down and it's going to happen soon. And you said to them, so like in a couple thousand years, this is going to happen? Well, no, soon. The time is near. You need to know about this. And that's what we have in the book of Revelation. So we need to keep that firmly in mind as we go through the book. We're going to revisit that idea a lot. The time is near. And of course, the book is addressed in chapter 1 and verse 4. Who's he writing to? In 1:4. The 7 churches that are in Asia. They needed to know. They needed to know some things that were going to affect their lives. And it was going to happen soon. All right, let's look at the third key. It's written to give comfort to persecuted Christians. And we see that concept throughout the book. Look at chapter 1 and verse 9. I, John, your brother and fellow partaker in the tribulation. You know, people think sometimes of the tribulation as something that's still to come, even future for us. John says he's a partaker in the tribulation. There was something happening in their time, in their day. John is a partaker with them in the tribulation. 5 out of the 7 letters that we see to the 7 churches in chapters 2 and 3, they have to do with, or at least they mention, persecution. And it was going to get worse. Revelation 6:9. When the Lamb broke the 5th seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain because of the word of God and because of the testimony which they had maintained. Were brothers and sisters in the Lord that were slain because of their faith in God. Persecution was going on. Chapter 13 and verse 7, speaking of the first beast, and we'll get to him in a minute. It was given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. So, if persecution is mentioned again and again, there's several references I could give you. Why do you think Jesus is giving this to the church? Isn't it to say, I'm with you, I know your situation, I'm going to help you, and just stay faithful to me.
I will bring victory.
I will bring victory. That's right. All right, what's the next one? Number 4. This is where my eyes really started to be opened as to the meaning of all of this writing. The book of Revelation identifies for us the dragon, that's chapter 12, the first beast that comes up out of the sea, that's chapter 13, and we see them throughout the rest of the book. It identifies the second beast for us. Now, this is key because you could go off overboard speculating about it's this and it's that, it's the other thing. Keep reading. The book of Revelation will tell you what these things are about in many cases. So, again, what I want to do is show you what's here, just to establish the framework, the big picture here. So turn over to Revelation chapter 12. We're going to see a dragon in this chapter. He's huge, he's red, he's angry, he's trying to devour this child, and you read that and go, what is this about? What is this dragon? Well, he'll tell us. Look at Revelation 12:9. Who is the dragon? It's the devil. It's Satan, who deceives the whole world. So we don't have to wonder, So stick that in your back pocket. The dragon is Satan. And that helps to unlock the whole book. Look over at chapter 13 and verse 1. We see this first beast that comes up out of the sea. Oh, what is this about? Well, hang in there. Keep reading. He's going to tell us. And it helps to unlock the book. Look at verse 1 of chapter 13. And the dragon stood on the sand of the seashore. Who's the dragon? The devil. Then I saw a beast coming up out of the sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads. And on his horns were 10 diadems, and on his heads were blasphemous names. And the beast which I saw was like a leopard, and his feet were like those of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his throne and great authority. I saw one of his heads as if it had been slain, and his fatal wound was healed, and the whole earth was amazed and followed after the beast. They worshipped the dragon because he gave his authority to the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast, and who is able to wage war with him?" There was given to him a mouth speaking arrogant words and blasphemies, and authority to act for 42 months was given to him. And he opened his mouth in blasphemies against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, that is, those who dwell in heaven. It was also given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And authority over every tribe and people and tongue and nation was given to him. All who dwell on the earth will worship him, everyone whose name has not been written from the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who has been slain. What do we learn about this beast? Well, he comes up out of the sea. He's made up of 3 different animals, isn't he? Did you see that? What were the animals? We have the leopard, the bear, and the lion. Now, does that remind you of other passages in the Bible? Yeah, very strongly, doesn't it? What does it remind you of, Russ? Daniel chapter 7, where we see a beast. We see 4 beasts, rather. One is a lion, one is a bear, one is a leopard. And then we see a 4th beast with 10 horns. And lo and behold, we see right here a beast made up of these animal qualities and who has 10 horns. Let me hold off on that for a moment, though. Let's look at Revelation 13. Look at verse 5. Uh, 5 through 7. Read through that again. What do you learn about this first beast? He blasphemes God, right, in verse 6. What do you learn? Say again. Okay, expand on that for us. Okay, we're going to talk about 42 months in a moment. It's a key word in Revelation. What does he do for those 42 months? Okay. Yeah, he's got authority. He's waging war against the saints, isn't he? What else do we learn? He has authority, as Cheryl said, over every tribe, every people, every tongue and nation. It's in verse 7. All on the earth who do not belong to God, whose names aren't in the book of life. They worship him in verse 8. So what you put all this together, the first beast he's a world power who's hostile to God and to God's people, and who is worshiped by people who don't belong to God. Well, that doesn't really answer everything, does it? So let's start speculating. Oh, it's this, it's that, it's the other thing. No, just keep reading. Come over to chapter 17. And we're going to revisit all of this, but I want you to see the big picture. Come over to chapter 17. We'll learn more. Look at verse 7. And the angel said to me, "Why do you wonder? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has 7 heads and the 10 horns." That's our beast. We learn here that the beast is carrying a woman on its back. We'll talk about that in a second. But this is the beast with the 7 heads and the 10 horns. Look at verse 9. Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits, and they are 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other has not yet come, and when he comes, he must remain a little while. What do these 7 heads symbolize? Remember, symbolic language. What do the 7 heads symbolize? They are 7 kings. That's right. You see that in verse 10. And notice 5 have fallen and 1 is. 1 is, as John writes, 1 is. 1 is reigning. So what does that tell you? Whoever these 7 kings are, they were reigning at the time that John writes. One of them was. And who was reigning over the world and was hostile to God and was persecuting the church at the time that John writes in the 1st century? Yeah, it's Rome. It's the Roman Empire. The Caesars, the emperors. That's right. Yes, and they would have to, you would be forced to take a little pinch of incense and put it on the altar and say, "Caesar is Lord." And if Christians didn't do that, they were in for a lot of trouble, weren't they? They were seen as subversive. But here we see the clues. The angel says, "I'll tell you what this is about. The 7 heads are 7 kings, one of which was reigning at the time John writes." So we're talking about the Roman Empire. Notice also what are the 7 hills according to verse 9. Seven mountains or 7 hills on which the woman sits. The woman here is the harlot. A world power built on 7 hills. What comes to mind? Rome. Rome was always known as the city on 7 hills.
18, verse 18.
Yeah, and hold on to that thought, because we're going to talk about the woman. But the first beast is the Roman Empire. How do we know that? Well, the book has told us. It's the power that was ruling when John writes. It's the power that was persecuting Christians. It's the empire that was built on 7 hills, or the city that was built on 7 hills. So the first beast is the Roman Empire. Just stick that in your head somewhere and file it away, because we're going to be looking at this beast a lot in the weeks to come. There was a second beast going back to Revelation 13. Look at verse 11. I'm just going to introduce this second beast, and we'll pick up here next time. Revelation 13:11. So again, what we're doing is just establishing the main characters of this picture that's being painted. Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb and spoke as a dragon. You learn something right away, don't you? He's associated with the dragon, who is the devil. And he has horns like a lamb, so he looks innocent, but he's associated with the dragon. He exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and he makes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose fatal wound was healed. He performs great signs so that he even makes fire come down out of heaven to the earth in the presence of men. Who is this second beast? Well, you come back over to chapter 17 and he'll tell you who the second beast is. At least give us very, very strong clues as to his identity. So take a look at that for next week, and also take a look at, in chapter 17, the harlot that is sitting on top of the beast with 7 horns and 7 heads and 10 horns. Who is the harlot? Chapter 17 will identify her. And just to show you the next 2, the book of Revelation identifies the 1260 days. That comes up a lot. 1260 days, or 42 months, it's sometimes called, or times and a half time. So 1 year, 2 more years and a half a year, 3.5 years. It identifies what that's about. And it identifies the kingdom. And that's where a lot of people go astray in thinking this is all about a kingdom that's yet to come. But we'll look at that next week and see if that's the case. Any final thoughts? Yeah.
I'm thinking about 2 John 1. 2 John 1, starting in verse 7 through 9 says, "Many deceivers who do not acknowledge Jesus Christ as coming in the flesh have gone into the world. Any such person is a deceiver and an antichrist. Watch out that you do not lose what you have worked for, but that you may be rewarded fully. Anyone who runs ahead and does not continue to teach Christ does not have God. He will continue to teach and both Father and Son." Is that kind of what we're studying someone now?
Well, there's definitely a spirit that is anti-Christ in the Roman Empire, and the rulers of it. They were certainly against Christ.
We look at all the countries around the world, a lot of them are Muslim, and they don't believe in Jesus Christ. They will persecute and kill them.
Yeah, that's true. So,
John speaks of multiple antichrists, so he's not identifying one time.
Ben.
How familiar do you think the audience is in
That's a good question. I think if they were familiar with their Old Testament, and some of them might have been, they would have been very familiar with a lot of the symbols. And just from their culture, they would have been familiar. For example, we're going to talk about the harlot next time, a luxurious woman. And one of the things that history has shown us is that there were coins that had this luxurious woman on them that they would have been familiar with. And we'll see what the harlot represents next time. But yeah, if you think about, well, this is all about things that are for today's time or for the future, even from our perspective. It's about, jets and ICBMs, and they certainly wouldn't have known anything about that. This was for their day and time, something that they needed to know. So let's close in prayer.